Would you like to support Cubs Out Loud? One way is to join us over on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, patrons get early access to our shows, the pre- and post-show, and various other rewards. You can learn more at patreon.com/CubsOutLoud. Thanks to all our patrons for their support in making this podcast. It's December 15th, 2024. I'm Jeff.
Who's your bear? That's right. I am your bear.
And that makes me Gary.
Everyone else is thinking it, and I just say it.
Welcome to Cubs Out Loud, the Bear Podcast, a then terminal link to episode number 766. And we got Tony here! Yay! We are currently a threesome to a foursome with a guest because Damon is out being kinky. I don't know. What is he doing?
I believe this is the Chorus's holiday show weekend.
Okay.
Besides, threesomes are always welcome.
That's true.
Duly noted.
All right. Let's get kinky.
Can we get kinky tonight? I got so many things on my mind.
But, not just kinky. Let's get Mimi.
So, yeah, we've talked recently about the surgence of Blue Sky as one of the newest social media platforms. And I don't know about the two of you, in terms of like what you've been seeing, but it really is giving me the feels for the old days of Tumblr, like with people posting things about themselves, sharing memes, that kind of stuff. And I don't know why, but I mean, and it might be the algorithm for me specifically, but I've seen a fair amount of kink type memes come back. And I thought we just like go over a couple of them and kind of talk about it and like what the implications of that is, because I don't think we've quite discussed that before. In terms of that, because I think folks feel like a resurgence of a type of freedom, especially if they came over from another platform that we don't like to talk about anymore. So it was just kind of interesting to me because I was like, I don't know how to explain it. It felt like kind of people were like, oh, that's right. I have this freak flag. I want to fly it. Like, and I really want people to know, you know?
And I think part of it is it's an insular community. I mean, it's still growing. So it's kind of a niche when it started. It's up to like, what, 25 million users now?
Yeah, I think they just crossed that threshold like yesterday or the day before, maybe.
And so I think it's a kind of a safe environment compared to the million or hundreds of millions that are on other platforms.
Correct. So what I did was I captured just a couple of images that I figured we would go over, and just kind of talk about like the familiarity, what we think about it. You'll see there's a progression in terms of the information that's sort of intentional as to why that is. And for those of you that happen to be watching us on YouTube, there will be a visual as well to help you. So we'll kind of describe it for our audio listeners.
One thing I thought was it feels like it's similar to also like LiveJournal way back in the day.
Oh, that's totally fair.
And even kind of like Google Plus when it was starting to take off. It's
You know, I saw somebody reference that the other day on Blue Sky. They were like, man, that was the platform that unfortunately, how do they phrase it? Something like it had so much potential and it just didn't happen.
Yeah. I still wish the circles concept would take off on other platforms, but.
True. Very true. So this first one is pretty straightforward. Your classic meme, just text on a background. And I don't know why, like it just amuses me in a silly kind of stupid way.
You gotta
I'm
sing
pretty
it.
sure this one's been around for a very long time.
You gotta sing it.
So much so that you can find it on Google image search in various forms, and I'm pretty sure you can get products made on Etsy with this saying on it.
And you gotta sing it.
Would you like to do the favors, Jeff?
If you're kinky and clap your... Oh, they're tied. Never mind.
Yeah. I've seen some variations of it where it actually says clap your hands, and then it says, oh, never mind.
Oops.
Yeah. They're tied, they're restrained, they're roped, they're cuffed. There's been variations of that. So I think part of the thing about people sharing kink memes is a way to, this just came to me, digitally flag?
Yeah.
Question mark? Like to kind of put out there what your interest is, or that you're of like mind, and then see what people think about that, or if they respond to it or whatever. I wouldn't say that this one necessarily is trying to make connections with other people, even though it
It's
is
funny.
right. I mean, but it is like about, and I'm going to look to Tony on this. Would you consider this referencing bondage?
Oh, it's definitely talking about bondage. I mean,
Well, I mean, it's kind of focusing on restraint, but I don't know
Yeah.
if like,
I think it's just the admission of, oh, you're getting into something kinky here.
true.
Uh,
Very true.
if you think about it, a lot of those posts that are felt cute, might delete later, are kind of the same idea of you can put a post out there and then remove it. So it can be of the moment.
Right.
So very literal flagging.
Oh, that's yeah. That's fair. Sometimes I see those and I'm like, there is a part of me that understands it if you have like dysmorphia, like concerns about like your body, your attractiveness, and that you might be the type of person who finds themselves going back and forth between like different moods or different mindsets. So that makes complete sense to me that a person would be like, I might take this down later. But there are, to me, some obvious times when people kind of post that, and I'm like, you have no intention of taking this down. Like, you were just clickbaiting, like, to get people to, interact with you.
And for others, it's flirting. It's I can put a little bit of info out there and see who really notices.
Fair.
Saw you from across the web browser.
I always think of the might delete later meme, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I think it's gotten old. Like, it's not funny anymore. Because most of the
People still do it.
time they're just saying that just to get, again, clickbaity. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, cute picture, and just move on. It's whatever.
But that's why I said,
It's just old.
to me, I think it's obvious when people are using it on purpose to be clickbaity. I think there are other times that I think it becomes obvious to me that the person does have some insecurity, and that's not a judgment. It's like they don't post very often, and they definitely don't post like that with any frequency. So I personally interpret that as this is legitimately like their hesitancy. So they're kind of dipping their toe into putting this post out there, as opposed to others. That's why I was saying like other people, I'm like, like,
I think those people who literally might delete later, if they are going to say something when they do the post about it, I think they're probably at nowadays, because so many people are using it for clickbait meme sort of things, that they probably would have said, hey, I wanted to post this, but I don't know how I feel about it, so I might take it down later or something like that. They're not going to say, feeling cute, might delete later or something like that.
Well, but for me, there's a
It's
portion
way
of,
said.
yeah, for me, there's a portion of like flirting with it. So like Gary, if you posted this, if you're kinky and you know it, clap your. And I turned around and reshared it. That would be known. You would then know that I was resharing your meme. And so that's kind of a subtle way to like flirt back.
It's interesting that you view it that way, Tony, because I would have taken it as, oh, they like it. Like, not as in they like it and they like me. They just like the meme, hence the sharing it. So, yeah, I think there's ways to, I guess, kind of view it or interpret it and then figure out what your next steps are going to be in that case.
Like if you saw a whole bunch of people sharing it, you might pick the one person you kind of want to flirt with and reshare their picture instead of the 20 other ones you saw.
True. Very true. Well, and that might also be, that's just like if someone posted it and then you liked it.
Mhm.
You know.
And kind of hope they like your repost back and that sort of thing.
Right. No, that makes sense. All right. So the next one is a twist on a meme that's been around for about 5 years now, actually. We were discussing this in pre-show. For those out there who are familiar with Kombucha Girl, aka Brittany Broski, she had an infamous, I think it was TikTok video. It might have been on YouTube originally, in which she tries the kombucha fermented drink for the first time. And she goes through a roller coaster, like kind of a whole journey of experience and emotion. And so people screen grabbed the infamous two faces, the kind of disgust, gross face, and the now hold on, like I might be into this. So the twist on this one, it says scrolls past kink I'm not into, so it has the bad face. And then the next one where it says the curiosity face, it says scrolls back up to make sure.
That's fair.
Guilty.
Right.
Totally fair.
Like, it's totally accurate, right? Because you're scrolling along and you're like, I'm not really, and then you're like, well, like I'm gonna say something. I realize this is gonna be revealing and get me into a little bit of trouble with some certain people. I have several friends who are in the furry community. I do not consider myself a fur. I don't have a fursona. I'm not interested in having a fursuit. However, what I can really appreciate is the artistry and the creativity that goes into it. So like I love seeing people find a personality, present themselves. Oh, that's pretty cool. The artwork though that gets done in the community is like astounding to me at times as to how really good it is. And I have to own some of it's hot. Like it's definitely sexy, even though it's like, what is it? Anthropomorphizing? Is that what it is? Taking animals but giving them human like characteristics and qualities.
It's a way to add to that fantasy.
True.
And give you the lore and the background and the history and the story and a bit of kink into it as well.
So this is one that has definitely applied to me. The dozen or so, well, it used to be less than a dozen, the handful of people that I knew in the community would post things, especially on Twitter. I don't think I saw too much on Tumblr. And there was a time where some of them I was like, I might not have to follow you anymore because that's all you post all the time. But then, it is sort of like, with frequency of awareness. But I did find there was, more often than not, I was just scrolling past, like I wasn't really interested. But there have been a couple times where I'm like, hold up, go back. Like, let me look a little closer at that. I've kind of felt that way about bondage. Like we've shared, I think in our what's going on in the past, there's a rope bondage like artist. I think they're on the West Coast. They classically use like mostly male physique with red rope specifically. And they do all these like scenes, and so it's very much meant to be artistic. So it's not like they're trying to show a specific knot or a specific like arrangement. It's more like about body position and like who the model is and that kind of stuff. And that's another one where like I kind of like rope bondage doesn't specifically bring anything out in me, but there are times when I'm like, whoa, and I'm like, that's really good, like good artistry, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, as far as knots go, that I am impressed by other folks being able to do that and that level of artistry, as you were pointing out. I don't think I could ever do it, but it would definitely be, let's scroll back up and look at that a little closer.
I'm like, I would like somebody to do that to me.
Well, and I do think that that's one of the things that can happen is that you are opened up to something that you weren't aware of before, or that's part of the whole reality of the meme. So the meme is kind of a stereotype, but it's based in some truth. And the truth is that there are times that you get, I don't want to say sucked into, but like there's something that draws your attention. Hence you end up going back and looking and being like, now hold on. Whether you see yourself in it or participating in it or wanting to watch it, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I think if anything for this meme, I don't think it happens too much for me. Like I'll scroll and being like, what is this? And then make a judgment and then move on instead of like, no, I'm not into that, and just scroll past. I'll actually stop, look, and then just keep scrolling. Or I might stop,
I think
enjoy, and then scroll.
It also depends on the subjects that are part of it.
That's
Because you
true.
may scroll past going, I'm not interested in that topic, but then turn around and come back with, I might be interested in those people.
Very true. I was going to say, I think it also depends on your mood.
Mhm.
So like if you're having some alone time, the content may not be what you're desiring in that moment.
That's fair.
Or it may not be what you think you're wanting in that moment. And then you find yourself being surprised by how it affects you, how it draws your attention or distracts you because you're busy with a different focus at the moment.
And then a week later, you're like, where did I find that at?
All right, that is one thing I will say. Not that they're listening. Blue Sky. I'm so looking forward to an update where you can bookmark posts because it is the one thing we kind of don't have going on right now that I really wish. Because like in making this show and trying to go back and find these things, it was very difficult. Like especially like there are some things that were shared with frequency, but I knew there were very specific things I wanted, and then that became a problem because I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like everybody had this and now, trying to find it. So many more posts have happened since then. And because Blue Sky really does work like on a calendar basis, like it goes from the now backwards, you suddenly find yourself scrolling, like trying to get back to whatever you had looked for before.
But you could always hit the share thing and grab the link and save it off.
Yeah, you can, but I know me, like more often than not, it's not, if I don't share it right then and there, there's a bad habit that I have that it occurs to me later. Like there's a delay and it's been at least a day probably. And then I'm like, oh, I should share that with so-and-so or blah, 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 or whatever. And like in this case, like this came up, I kind of thought about this before as a topic. And then I was like, eh. And then, as time went by, I was like, oh, we should go back to that. And then at that point, I'm like, oh, great. Now I have to go looking for everything. Like, because I wasn't,
Or you
saving
could
it,
use
especially
the
2
like
weeks later.
feature. Use the like feature and then add the liked feed. And then you can just like it and then go to your likes feed.
That's fair. That's just one thing
That's
you
still a
could
few
do.
hundred posts a day.
Some people are very active.
Sorry.
You don't have to apologize.
No need to be sorry on that.
But your point is well taken, though, Tony. Like, if you're a very active user, that could still pose a bit of a challenge to sort through.
Because I don't think
I'm a
or
Blue
search
Sky
through the
slut.
past.
I don't think the other platform has anything like that. You would have
see your
do this-
likes?
Oh no, there is a bookmark feature. Okay, I never
Yeah.
used
It's
it.
been so long I couldn't remember.
Mm,
I know Tumblr did.
yeah. And I do think like a lot of this stuff will come eventually. Along the way, it's just a matter of them building it into the code and then rolling it out.
And Blue Sky is kind of interesting because of how it's built. Right now, I think they're just trying to deal with the explosion of growth that they've had on it.
That's fair.
So those features might be a little bit delayed.
Okay. So let's move on to the third one here. So this is kind of a variation on ones that we've seen before. It's the kind of the, to me, it's the typical list. It's like, oh, I'm trying to think of what it's called. There's another version. Kind of like the anonymous message type meme, that people can ask you questions. But in this case, it says, get to know my Blue Sky, and then in parentheses, lewd edition. And I also just realized that the Blue Sky butterflies are wearing harnesses.
I had not noticed that. That's nice.
That's just too funny to me. Because, that's what everybody wants us to co-opt a platform's logo and, So anyways, this is a list of 35 either questions and or statements. Well, they're technically 30 questions and then 5 photo things. And the concept is you post this on your Blue Sky, and for every like that you get, you go in order from 1 through going upwards. So like if you get 5 likes, then you would answer the first 5 questions. And, I think the idea is to try to get all the likes to match to the things. And then as each like occurs, you respond to it. So this one's not so much like a classic meme, but more about revealing of yourself, like being willing to do that without, I guess, bragging or like boasting, not being like, hey, here's 3 dozen things I'm into or whatever.
I don't know the easiest way to do this one because there's a whole lot, and I would not want to be the person sitting there answering all individual ones, waiting for all those likes to come in.
I would probably give it a time frame.
Yeah.
Post it and then give it either a few days or a week or something. Look at the total and then based off of that. And I would probably do 1 post per question, although I think that's what it's probably supposed to be for.
But and I also didn't know if this was like the not gonna lie type of posts where people can ask you which one.
Yeah, and the problem might be if you end up with 1,000 likes for whatever reason, or a really high number, because you get up to 35 and 35 is add another picture. And then it's picture, and you're like, oh, I'm trying to get through 1,000 because I got a likes, but I don't have that many pictures.
Incentive to take more.
Well, that's true. But I think that's also where you kind of pick what you want out of that. Now, a different version of this, instead of making about likes, is that people just post numbers as a reply thread.
Yeah.
So you post this and then someone replies with 21, meaning they want the answer to question 21. Kind of a thing. So, I mean, I think it's pretty the standard in that case. This is one of the few that I've seen that's very kink BDSM kind of focused in terms of its list, because usually they're just I don't want to say generic, but more standard kind of questions. But it goes on to talk about some of the questions are what's your most vanilla kink, what's your favorite kink, what's your most underrated kink. And then it goes on in parentheses, this is something you want to see more of. Talks about squicks, in other words, turnoffs. In that case, so it's a little bit on the risk side. This one, in terms of what you're going to reveal, because it is based on likes, therefore you kind of know who the people are that you're replying to, as opposed to it being anonymous.
And this is where if you go to the Tumblr and the live journal days, this would be where you would answer all of them and share all of your answers.
But
true.
those
I
platforms
remember,
were meant to be more
stuff.
bloggy sort of things versus the short forms that are Twitter and Blue Sky.
I just realized an interesting, fun twist on this would be if everything had to be a photo, like as a reply, not just the last five, but
Yeah.
like you had to visually show what your answer is. So
Have you
like
ever
number 4, are
masturbated on
you?
camera? Picture of you masturbating. I have
To be fair, if
now.
it's on Blue Sky, you can go ahead.
Well, I mean, like, number 25. What's some place you'd like to have sex but haven't? So, I mean, that was sort of easy, and that, like, you just have to be able to post a picture of like a location, I guess, and see what that is gonna look like. I mean, some of these people just naturally they post about it, and it's not a question. Like, how many sex toys do you own? I mean, I don't know how many of those I've seen where they're just like putting all their bad dragon, inventory out on cam, and you're just like, okay, now we know that.
Actually, I had that example with somebody who was like, "Here's my collection," and show the entire bed that's covered from head to toe, and the cameras from the ceiling, so that you have to zoom in to see individual toys.
Yeah, and there's a part of me that thinks like, well, that's become a hobby.
Investment.
Right. Well, yeah, that too, because you own so much stuff.
I'd be more impressed as if they had like a display case or something.
I've seen those.
I don't. Now, see, when you get into display cases, that makes me
Versus
think like, this
all
is,
on a bed. Yeah.
well, but then if it's a display case, I feel like this is literally like a curated collection, and these things do not get used. Like, they are just viewed. That's been my upbringing. My parents were into antiquing, so like if you had something that was on display, and it was, especially if it was really precious, like it would be, unreachable or not easily accessible, I guess is the best way to phrase that. So I don't know.
Or it's just like shelving in a closet, or maybe just utility shelving in something that might look like a basement or a garage.
True. Very true.
AKA the dungeon.
Yeah, that's basically what I was trying to imply.
I just realized I remember, has this, I don't know if this phase has necessarily gone away. This was definitely probably crossover from Tumblr to Twitter. You guys remember the Funko Pop walls?
Oh yeah.
Like people just posting like a wall of their bedroom or whatever, and it is nothing but Funko Pops in the boxes, obviously. So that's what made me think of that.
Above the camera is where mine are.
Oh, I was like, we were already talking about your background and all your DVDs.
No, the Funkos are at the top.
Oh, okay.
No, we talked about
Guilty.
the DVDs in pre-show. Anyways, moving on.
And this is just the physical media. This isn't including everything that's already saved to hard drives.
I have a separate server elsewhere that has several terabytes of data for that.
Uh-huh. So let's go to the next one. Now, this one is part of a theme that we see pretty often. This one happens to be rather specific. This one's called Kink Bingo. This one I've seen several times. If you pay close enough attention, you'll probably realize that this one is thematic to the fur community, because of the imagery that the artist put into it at King Parts. And I believe that this originally came from Twitter/X in that case. But the whole concept is it's the bingo card, right? So like it has all these different things on it. And then in theory, you like take the image, kind of save it, use a software of some kind to modify the image to like put markings on all the different cards that match for you to see whether or not you get a bingo, and then you share it along with the original, and then people can, so on and so forth. In that case. In this particular one, is there anything that surprises you or you haven't necessarily seen before? I will say this one's a little different than the classic with just words on it.
So you're asking the wrong person for me, because I'm pretty much all of these.
Oh, are you saying that you have a God, what is that called? A coverall?
Pretty close, yeah.
I was trying to think of the bingo term where you have every square
Yeah.
filled in.
Like there's a few of those that are like slight, but they would still be covered. But then there's others that are like, oh yeah, definitely.
What I find interesting is, I guess there's two ways to view it, whether you're the giver or the receiver of said activity. Jeff seems lost in thought.
Distracted.
Yeah, I can't find a bingo. Sometimes I'm like going through and like I could probably check that one off. I could check. Nope, not that one. It's like every which way but loose.
Well, it is interesting because I guess it begs the question, like, are you thinking of filling it out as the person who does said acts or who receives said act? Like, if you do both, I think it's easier to get a bingo. But if you're thinking it like from like I guess a Dom perspective, slash like being the aggressor of that thing, then that could be
I'm
possibly limiting or the other way.
I'm looking at it. Would I like to be either side of this equation? If I
Mhm.
want to be on either side of this equation or both, it would be a check. If I one way, it would still be a check. If I'm the other, it'd still be a check. So just I'm somehow
it's
into
also-
this thing. So
There's also some of these on here that are more fantasy. Like you couldn't easily really do like size difference.
you
can.
size
Use
difference.
Well, but I mean, as far as like,
Not
you could have done it in the
extreme
past, but
size
you may not be in the
difference.
mood for it now.
Oh,
So again, where you can kind of make your bingo as to how you are right now.
Oh, that's true. I was just gonna say, as someone who is closer to 5 foot than not, I'm like, there like size difference is absolutely a thing.
It also depends on what you consider size difference. I mean, there the fantasy wise of 3 inches versus 30 feet.
Well, no, to be realistic, I was thinking of it like, yes, I think there is meant to be a difference between, like, I don't know, like, you know, Godzilla kaiju size versus, you know, humanity size or whatever. That is like a form of that. But I was thinking, like, trust, if there is a person out there who is a foot taller or more than me, they probably get my attention. Just
True.
And not just because they're tall. Just say it. So
or
But think back to like
some of those people who
2018
are
with
skinny
Tumblr.
who like them bigger, and some of those who like bigger like them skinnier.
that's true.
But like think back to 2018 and Tumblr and how many conversations around Ant-Man and Thanos.
About how they could have offed Thanos?
Yeah, very easily.
Yeah.
But that would qualify as size difference.
I mean, it'd be the last time they play, but, you know. Very true.
Actually, I'm surprised that there are some items on here that aren't on here because of the furry context.
Well, it is an interesting crossover bingo card, I think, because some of it is to me very much part of the furry community, and other parts aren't. So I feel like it was a good blend. I want to say that I don't know this artist, but given what they put together, I'm thinking like they have familiarity with a variety of communities or interest, hence it kind of reflects that way. So yeah.
It's also for the most part non-gender based. So there are a few, but that could be on either side of the desire, whether that's what you're looking for or whether that's what you have.
All right, I do have a question.
Mhm.
What is CNC? I can't quite make out based off of the picture.
Consensual non-consent. It's the
So yeah, go ahead, Tony.
I was going to
Yeah.
say it's the where you're being forced into having sex, but you've negotiated in advance. So
But the non-consent is consented. Is that the like
Yeah.
way to think of it? So like,
You're role
I
playing
think-
a non-consensual situation.
right. I think of it as a resistance role play.
Mhm.
I guess is a better way to think of it. At least that's the way I've always kind of considered it. I know that CNC for some people can be a little dicey, like from an opinion, like the concern is that how do you know that it's okay? And I feel like it's a legitimate question, but if you're not involved in the scene, you don't really have to be that concerned because it's not involving you. But I'm also trusting that all parties involved have clearly set out like their terms and their, boundaries and safe words or whatever to be able to have, open communication about the process.
Right.
And like most things, you have to trust the other person to an extent. If you don't trust them, then you probably don't want to get into that area. But like,
Right.
The top row there with breeding, like if you don't trust the partner you're with, you probably don't want to be taking things that far.
Well, and I think there's also like fantasy aspects to it. So like, yeah, like, well, one of them says breeding. There is a certain reality, like in terms of like, what can and cannot happen. So yeah, no, I hear you on that. Very much so. All right. And then let's move on to probably one of the most popular ones. So I'm not even sure how long this has been around. Let me see. I'm going to do a quick search. I don't know if I can find a time frame on this one. It's a whole website. Are you kidding me?
That doesn't shock me.
Let me. Oh, but there's a threat when visiting it. There's malware apparently on the website.
Lovely.
Thanks to my web stuff to like check it out. Anyways, not necessarily a good website to visit apparently, but it is interesting that it has all of this stuff loaded into it. Point is, they basically have this interesting meme of all these empty, what look like mason jars, for lack of a better reference. And then there are words underneath them, basically describing whatever that thing is. And the concept is that you fill in each jar color-wise. And this is what I find interesting about it is like, not only are you kind of indicating what you're interested in, but because it's a volumetric vessel, quote unquote, you can also indicate how much your interest is. Mm-hmm. So like you could put, so like if you're into, like, I don't know, I'm looking at a bunch of these to see if there's something that would kind of like being in chastity. Like you might be interested in it, but you don't necessarily want to go full hardcore. So you could fill the jar appropriately with like a little, something in between. In that case.
I think the fun ones are, especially when the artists get their hands on it, and then you have the overflowing ones.
I don't know if I've never necessarily seen
I
that.
will have to find one of those then.
Water sports would be a funny one to have that on.
And I think I don't know if this. I've seen variations on it, but the being able to highlight what. Again, it's kind of you could change it based on what you're into at that moment.
True. So yeah, this one has a lot of stuff on it. Some of it's a little bit more hardcore than others. And so I think there's lots of variations of this. So like there are some that are like including feederism, some that are more ABDL, all that kind of stuff. And they're fun. This is probably one of the more popular ones that I've seen. It also, sometimes there's something I can read into it when I see it, when they've filled it in. I see you're just shaking your head, Tony. because some of them, the way they've done it, it kind of looks like, please forgive, is the only image that comes to mind, like that I went to a restaurant with a paper menu for the kids and they just took the crayon and just kind of like, did that. So it's not necessarily being neat. And then there are other people who I might feel have some anal retentiveness about them, or OCD, because they would very strategically fill it in a certain way. So, the colors within all the lines, and it's like very clean looking, very artistic. So I think that's also revealing.
So I'll share for myself. Before here, I started filling this out and I gave up because there's only 2 of them that I don't have something in. So it was just forget it. There's no point.
Well, in that case, you could just put red circles around the 2 and say not yet.
Yeah. But
now I'm intrigued to know what the 2 are.
I literally went through the whole image and I imported it over to another machine so that I can neatly fill in each one of the yeah, and so I gave up on that too.
Now I'm really intrigued to know what the 2 are.
Now, mind you, that is 2 that are of not interest to me, but
okay,
it's one of those. I don't have anything against it. It's just they're not on my list of things. But should we leave it as an open-ended question?
I think we can discuss it in post-show. I have an idea about one.
I mean, if anything, this is very much kind of like the kink test, the BDSM test, where it's like, hey, here's a list of these different types of kinks. Here's what I'm into. Here's what I'm kind of into. Here's things I'm interested in based off of how you fill it up, and kind of communicate to other people, hey, this is what's my jam and what's not.
Mm-hmm. And it also depends on if you have, and it could also be advertising what you have done versus what you're interested in too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the one thing about, I think, the jars. You could create a colored key code. So you could make it like red light, green light, like a traffic light system. You could, have gradations of color of like, meaning, this is what I've done. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I would like to do. This is, yes, absolutely, anytime, anywhere, no matter what. I'm pretty sure someone out there has already utilized the hanky code coloring system. I could just see that as an interesting melding of the 2 things.
I'm going to say you just created a new meme, like a kink meme here. It's the Pantone kink meme.
Oh, God. But Pantone would sue for rights, obviously.
Of course. They'd make sure to get a percentage of theirs.
Yes. Very true.
But yeah, for there, I could understand and see a lot of different people highlighting different, like just going through the list of all the categories here: public play, wax, things like that. I know folks who are definitely into some of those categories. I know some that are secretly into them, going back to our first meme,
mm-hmm.
but would never say it in public.
True. So here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we've kind of discussed the memes, what do we think about people sharing these on platforms? And what I mean by that is, like, I think, like I was discussing earlier, people feel empowered to kind of introduce themselves in certain circles or certain ways. Notably, Blue Sky is not private, cannot be private at the moment. The way it was built, everything is public. Therefore, any of this stuff that you share specifically on that platform is not locked down. So, like, you can block people from seeing you and vice versa, but there's no way to start in that fashion. Like, you have to, like, basically have someone follow you or preemptively know of their account and then block them. So what I'm wondering about is, Do we think like that there may be some oversharing? And I'm not passing judgment. I'm just saying like that people are perhaps not aware of what that means to share this information, especially I would say on that platform.
So an image like this one, where it's just an image, you're filling out whether or not you may have an interest in a topic. I think that one's okay. The
Mhm.
prior one where you were actually answering, like, what's your longest you've ever traveled for sex, and you tell a story to explain it. That to me is more dangerous
Okay.
because you're not providing more detail, more context, more specific information. Whereas here you might, hey, I like bondage. That's not going to give somebody much information. Now, if
Mhm.
your work finds it, that's a totally different answer than.
Well, and that was one of the things I was thinking about is like now this information's available out there publicly. And if anyone can link it to your other information on the internet, that it becomes a part of your online identity.
Yeah.
Whether it be work or like a non-work group that you're involved in, whether it be a hobby or an interest, um, a nonprofit, whatever have you. Um, so I just kind of wondered about that. Like, well, I saw this like surgeons, like I was saying, that people are, I think, feeling, I don't want to say emboldened, but maybe re-energized. Probably because if they were on that other platform we don't like to talk about anymore, they felt oppressed, or, the feed was not necessarily the most comforting or enjoyable. So I think like that's been a whole big energy shift over the past couple months. But it started me wondering, like, I wonder how many people really know, like, they're sharing all this stuff and they're really kind of putting it all out there, so to speak.
So the downside is, back in the eras of like posting on Facebook and things like that, where you would share information to your friends group, but you wouldn't necessarily share it to the public.
Mhm.
And the rash of like fake accounts coming out and like all of that stuff. To me, there is a market, not necessarily now, but think another decade in the future, where all of that information has been collected by bots, all of your friends' accounts spoofed so that they could get a hold of what messages you had shared with other groups. And now all of that can be put in, and data for you can be pulled out very easily.
Mm. Fair.
Folks in the EU have the ability to GDPR and be able to pull their information. Us here, we don't. So in 10 years, if you're going up for a job interview and one of your coworkers decides to do a search, can they spend the $20 and be able to pull all the detailed information for posts that you made?
Right. So, Tony, what is, because I'm not familiar with it, GDPR?
Oh, God, I don't even know what the
I don't
terminology
even
is. Give me a
remember what
second.
it is. It's a
Yeah,
European privacy law, which is, I
it
think, a
is.
little bit stricter than uh, the U.S.
So basically, what it is if you have an interaction with a company and they have collected information on you, thanks to the GDPR, you can turn around and tell them that they have to get rid of the information, which presents an interesting thing of they, at that point, have to get rid of anything that has your data in it. But they also can't keep track of the fact that you asked for it because that would be data that you're keeping. So they have to get rid of that too.
Interesting.
But it's actually finable. So if a company, for example, loses information on like their database of users and you've asked to be removed, they can actually be fined for not having removed it and then exposing your data. Whereas here we get a little letter in the mail that says, hey, you've got another year of credit monitoring that you're getting. Similarly, the other thing I was going to give you on stuff like Facebook and even this is in another 10 years, imagine the AI has gotten to the point where it can interpret this picture. And now we can make a digital version of you, Gary. It's gone through all of your posts and knows what your kinks are. And so somebody can make the digital version of you and have you doing a sexy chat back and forth, but as you.
Well, that's where they would get it wrong because they don't really know me that well.
But
At least
given enough-
I would feel like it wouldn't be a good representation.
well, it's what they want, not necessarily what you want.
Well, I think if they're trying to authenticate replicating me, I guess that's where I was coming from.
But that's kind of where all of the marketing for, like, if we want to try and market directly to you, let's do a profile on you and identify what your interests are.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can collect all this information, including your kinks, we can probably target you pretty darn well.
I guess so. I'm trying to understand like the marketing implication of like what is it that they're going to market to me?
So, like, let's say on here, if you marketed that you enjoy spanking, we can then advertise irritation cream to you.
I was
I'm
wondering
picking
where you're
random
going
things.
with that. I was like, they're going to market paddles? Like,
You
I
know,
mean, that's
Facebook's
actually
advertising has
that's
gotten
still
weird.
possible.
no, I know,
but in
I'm
general,
like,
probably more the irritation cream.
but I guess in my mind, and this is fair, I had never thought of this before. When we've talked about impact play, do bottoms for spanking collect like implements, or is it usually the tops that do?
Both.
See, I would have presumed it was the tops that were the ones that were collecting the implements. Like,
Well, the
then
bottoms might
having
want
them
it to,
available.
to have it so they can give it to the tops and do it on them.
Well, I mean, that's fair. I don't know. I guess I just presumed like the tops were the ones that like were making the purchases and then, showing their wares, like their smorgasbord or menu of
Probably
options
more,
to choose from.
more. That's probably more of the possibility, but there's probably plenty of bottoms who want to make sure that they have the implements that they enjoy on hand in case they have a partner who doesn't.
And it's a combination. Like, think of it as dildos. Like, if you're the bottom, you might bring one along that will work on you. Because it could be a very bad thing to assume that the tops collection will be good for you because it may be a little on the larger size than you can want,
Or too small.
for example. Yeah. So taking your own could also be helpful. And you may also just have that favorite binky.
There you are. Favorite rope?
Interesting.
Well, and the other categories are, I mean, even if you want to get into like uniforms, if you're participating in that, you might take your own. They may have some. Kind of becomes down to the negotiation, and you bring what you want to the table.
If they know you're into leather, well, there's plenty of companies that sell legitimate leather. Non-kinky specific.
Boring. Just teasing.
But if you're into leather, maybe you just want a leather jacket.
Yeah.
Well, and that goes to, I think, back to the whole like what your specific interest is. Whether or not this is getting more into a scene or a role play, like those kind of things can matter then. I don't know. Like, I guess I hadn't quite thought of it from that point, but it's an interesting prospect, Tony, that you're talking about, that they would take all of that publicly available information, and build a profile of you and how they can achieve commerce through you, so to speak.
And the reason why it's interesting now is because Blue Sky being completely open, and I don't see any way that they're going to be able to lock it down, because that's kind of the whole point of the platform, is that they're not hiding stuff. So eventually DMs will probably get some privacy, because I know there's some now, so that'll probably stay, but I don't think they're ever going to have quite the like friends list type limitations, because the whole point is that information needs to be public.
Well, and I do wonder if that's something they're going to be able to figure out how to navigate in the future to make the privacy possible in certain aspects. Like, would they be able to make the DMs private to multiple parties, like, and somehow add some encryption aspect to it. So in essence, you could create groupings, that would share or cross post, so to speak, without it being public. I don't know.
Now, I'm going to ask a legitimate question here because I'm not a TikTok user, but are there controls in it?
I don't think I'm not a TikTok user. I hate TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a person who uses it. I've viewed it under two premises. One, people share it, so I ended up seeing like the
Yeah, same
the
here.
postings that they're sharing. And I have intentionally watched it, but that was only because of the eclipse earlier this year, and one of my best friends was streaming on it, like at the time. So I was trying to figure out how to watch them on it, and while interesting, I also realized this is not my generation. Like this is not me. This is not my age. This is not like,
Well, we know Damon has a TikTok.
That's
But I
true.
mean, in general, TikTok tends to be, I'm going to share it regardless of who it's going to. I'm just going to make it public. And the idea is that if it isn't popular, it just gets flooded out by the 18 billion other posts out there so that it doesn't filter up to the top so nobody will see it in the future. But if you hold that data on for 10, 15 years, that's going to have a very interesting data mining opportunity, even if most people aren't ever going to see it.
I mean,
True.
as far as I know, there's no, even on the other platform, that you only either have your account is public or it's private, period. Flat out. There's no, if it's public, you can't just have like some of your posts being for people you're friends with or anything like that. So you can't group it. So I think Blue Sky is essentially working to be a new, more open, less restrictive, I should say, of the other platform. So eventually they may be able to give the option to set your account to private, where only people who you allow to follow you can see your posts.
But in general, you're there to publish, right? You're out there to literally put it out there for the world. I mean, YouTube, Threads, TikTok. I mean, it's a platform meant to share all of this stuff. So
Yeah,
the
but I
idea
only
would
want
be
to share it with
you
a
normally wouldn't hold it back.
certain group of people.
Yeah. But that's us. But I don't know if younger generations have that concern because there's so much data out there.
That's true. They're like, hey, everybody already has my data.
Yeah. Which will then be fun, again, 10, 20 years later of, oops, now I have to delete this. Think of all of the fun implications that happened a couple of months ago with people who, particularly in the politics, had shared stuff on various websites. All of it was getting pulled back out during that time period. And that's only within a couple of years.
Well, and I mean, that does go to show a little bit about like how it's time capsule-ish and the implications of that, because I get it. Like, it can be utilized as a resource, I guess, in a way, like, to document something. And yet at the same time, I'm like, yes, but that's specific of that time. So like, I hear a lot of people kind of in our age generation talking about how they go back and watch old movies from like the 80s or the 90s. And they're like, yeah, there's some cringe now when you view, because like they say certain words or do certain things and you're like, that would never get made today, or that would have been edited out, or, not in the script, or, things of that nature. And to me, that's reflective of like, yeah, it was a different time.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the maturity or the evolution of the society is to say that's not okay.
Yeah.
And therefore, change the reference or whatever. So
But
Yeah,
the thing is the data is still out there. So that's up to you to tell that story. Other people can turn around and latch onto it. And
right. Very true. So yeah, I just thought that it was interesting to see this stuff kind of come up. So like there's two parts to this. Like one, like what are some of the common memes that are, going on out there, the different like versions and what they reveal about a person. And then the second part was, this latter conversation about the implications of sharing that, especially on platforms where there is lack of lockdown, I guess is the best way to phrase it. And what that means for us, like as end users and the future, so to speak.
a lot of it is just, if you're going to be posting things, just recognize that you need to be able to answer to it in the future.
Mhm.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things I realized, that some people who follow me specifically might be disappointed because I don't really put myself out there like other people do. And I guess, like, for me, there is some privacy in that. Like, yes, you can infer a lot of things from the things that I like or that I share, but that's just it. Like, I'm not really putting me explicitly like out there in ways, that are, I guess, of me, if that makes sense. So I think like, and I totally own and recognize part of that's a control issue. But also that's how I want that to be handled, I guess, at least for me.
You determine what you're comfortable doing. So
Mhm.
I'll use Blue Sky as my example of, like, I won't post nudes to Blue Sky, but I also didn't post nudes to other sites either.
So
That's
what
fair.
I hear is you have nudes, we just haven't seen them.
Not in a public forum. Yes. Like the
I'm just
last time I
teasing
really
you.
shared nudes would probably have been LiveJournal, and that's because you could lock it down.
Oh,
Like,
that's fair.
even Google Plus, I probably shared a few, but not many, just because I knew there was a whole Google platform behind it that will save them for 40 years.
Right.
So for me, that's where the line gets crossed. Of I can't post a nude on it. However, FCF is a thing on Blue Sky, so I get the benefits of seeing everyone else.
That's true.
Right. And that's the part I think that I've been appreciating about the new platform. For a person like me who is voyeuristic, who appreciates that about like seeing others in that capacity, I think it's been a bit of a boon in terms of, people being so emboldened, I guess, or comfortable with sharing of themselves and others.
And I guess for those folks who aren't familiar, should I explain what FCF is?
Probably.
I mean, you can. There's a part of me that's like, who doesn't know what that is, I guess. But
If you're not on Blue Sky, you probably have no awareness because it's not something you're going to do on Facebook.
Well, it's on the other platform.
That one in
I
particular.
mean, I don't know
yes.
why I'm saying the other platform when I'm literally got the old logo and the new logo on the thing here. So,
no, you don't. Those are two different logos.
oh, that's Tumblr. Never mind.
Yes, that is Tumblr. Like, even though people might have forgotten about Tumblr, it still exists. And people
I
still
totally
use it.
forgot. But we do have the other platform.
I logged on Tumblr earlier.
Yeah, we do have the actual logo for X and Blue Sky and Tumblr on the screen. But the reason why is because I think those are the three most popular NSFW containing platforms at the moment. I had to be careful about how I wanted to say that because I know that Threads is popular for some people, but I don't think I see any of that on Threads, or maybe it's just the algorithm isn't showing it to me.
I have never been on Threads.
Yeah, it's Facebook's other platform, not to be confused with Meta's Instagram and Messenger. Like, it's their other prong.
I'm sure
think
Facebook is staring at Blue Sky growing up and just being like, we could have done that if we'd shown
could have,
nudes.
Well,
but you did.
and Facebook is still like long form posting. Because
Yep.
I think they have a limit, but it's really large compared to X and Blue Sky, and Tumblr being the full, essentially is a blogging platform. So it's long form as well.
Yeah, and for me, Blue Sky, like you were mentioning earlier, Gary, the timeline is the feature for me. Like Facebook doesn't give you the ability to really sort by your timeline. You have to go by their algorithm.
But it's really hard. You can't make it your default.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you can find it anymore. It's part of the reason I'm not necessarily on there. I feel like, plus I also feel all I get on there, unless I'm looking specifically at the main timeline, all I get is promotions of businesses and entities, not notifications about people posting. But that might also, I mean, that might be a outcome of me never being on there much anymore. I don't know. Like that might be throwing off the algorithm because I'm on there so infrequently that I don't see people's posts. Like, and that to me is a downside, like that you have to be on there with frequency to keep up, quote unquote. But to your point, Tony, like that is the nice thing about Blue Sky is that you can have it, you can customize it to be set up that it is going from most recent backwards through time, which I think some of us are of a certain generation and appreciate that because we can recall or notice when we were like, oh, I think I remember seeing this before. And that's the beginning of the, I've now gone back far enough to catch up to where I used to be, as opposed to endlessly scrolling and never knowing like if you're going to like see the same content again or not.
So I did have another question on the jar of kinks.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned earlier about people who would like kind of highlight over it and like squiggle on it to highlight things. Random poll of here of how does everybody access Blue Sky? Are you doing it via phone app? Or are you doing it via browser?
A little of both. Because it depends on what device I'm on. If I'm on my phone, I'm going by my app. If I'm on my desktop, I'm going by the website because they don't have a Chrome app or anything.
Yeah.
And on my iPad, I do it through the website because they don't really have a tablet app. And when you put the iOS app onto the iPad, it's just...
Yeah, it's an ABD window.
It's basically this phone app.
So, yeah, like I use all. So like if I'm on a desktop or a laptop, I'm probably using a browser integration or like using the browser website. If I'm on a mobile unit on my phone, it's the app easily. If it's on the tablet, it's either a browser or the app. It just depends on what my mood is. Like if I'm too annoyed with the app, then I'll just log into the web version on a browser. So yeah, I mean it's kind of all of the above, I guess.
So the reason I was asking is if you do the squiggles, you're probably using markup on your phone, and you're probably squiggling in the little areas you want. Whereas if you're on a browser, you're probably copying it into Paint and doing the paint bucket, and you're getting the much neater, cleaner version.
First, or you might be drawing a line, then using the paint bucket.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my feeling on that though is, Tony, it's like, again, it goes back to like your attention for detail. Like how specific are you? Because like if you have multiple platforms available, like if you only have handheld devices, then yes, it will be kind of limiting. You'll have to use a specific app in order to import the image, blah, 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 blah. But if you're multi-platformed, kind of like I was discussing, that I have, I guess, all the modalities except VR. So then you would just pick whatever, is in the moment. Because I'm going to be realistic about it. If I'm laying in bed and I'm using my tablet, the likelihood of me doing that meme and filling it out is probably going to be lower. And if I do it, then I'm probably not going to be as retentive about like how I participate in filling out the meme or whatever. I guess is the way to phrase that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's for me, it would be like whatever's immediately available. How quickly can you get that post out? And so
Mhm.
you'll use what tools you have right there. But I will admit, I love your idea of a VR blue sky. That would be so awesome.
I wasn't trying to infer using blue sky in VR.
Well, just
I love the
David's
idea
not
of
here,
opening
so
up
I'm
that
doing the
video and
hashtags
it's just
live.
like looking so huge.
Oh no,
zoom in.
trust me. There are some things on blue sky I would probably appreciate seeing blown up significantly in VR.
What we need for VR nowadays, because the controls for VR nowadays is literally like a handheld device
Mhm.
that you would like click buttons for and do hand motions for. What they need to do is basically we need the return of the power glove,
Oh God.
which senses your hand movements and you could just like you would be on like scrolling up on a phone like this. You could be doing
Well, you
this
can't.
and
I think you could do
gesture
that.
control this way.
I don't know if you could do it with Meta, and some of the other platforms. I'm pretty sure Apple Vision Pro though does have hand gestures as like
Yeah, it does.
part of the main piece of the operating system. What I'm interested to know though is, can some hand gestures be confused for other hand gestures while you're in VR? Because my concern would be that certain hand gestures
No, I'm not
would like
trying to scroll
alter.
up.
Right.
The question would be is would faster acceleration mean you're into it, or that you need to scroll to the next one faster?
I don't know. From what I've heard from folks who have Apple Vision Pro, media, specifically like videos, more so movies, maybe television shows, is just great. Like the field of vision, the presentation. So there is a part of me that's like, adult like film could really be something interesting in that environment. Do you have one, Tony?
Well, no, this isn't the Vision Pro. This is an older
Okay.
one, but yes, I have a 3D headset within reach.
So yeah, there is a part of me, and I do think that is an area I think that hasn't taken off in adult entertainment. Really, there was some interest, I think, initially about
Which is probably why VR
AR, VR.
hasn't gotten that as popular yet.
Right.
So the one that I just showed there, I'm almost guaranteeing you it was discontinued because every single person that started using it went straight to porn. Because it never made it out of developer stage. That's a Google's a branded one, and it basically made it to right before they went to market, and then they just discontinued it. And that my prediction is that every single one of their developers just immediately turned on developer mode and started loading porn in. And they realized that that's not something they could really market. So, but like with the Apple Vision, Apple controls the environment, so you're never going to get porn on it.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about how many porn apps you can buy on your iPhone. You can't. You can get media on it, but not actual like, interactive apps.
No, well, that's fair. But I was just gonna say, I'm like, if they put a platform, say like Blue Sky, into the VR environment,
Mhm.
I think that's the closest you would get, like as a crossover.
So
Because there would be media embedded within the app, I guess, on the platform is what I'm saying.
So I have heard that there are various porn companies who are getting into doing 3D and starting to record with it, because recording with one camera is fine. If you just have the second one, now you still have the 3D data, but you can always go back to a single camera.
True.
So you can still make normal, but you've recorded it in advance in that dual format. And now if you wanted to release it later, when those headsets become a little more feasible,
right?
I don't have the money for that. There's a reason I have a discontinued one here. It's much more in my price range.
I mean, I hear you on that. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, like when it first came out, I was intrigued. I was like, oh. Then I saw the price tag and I was like, nope. Like, If I hit the lottery, that's a toy I'll buy, but otherwise, probably not.
I would love it for the desktop, just being able to actually work and have lots of space and all of that stuff. But again, can't justify it.
Well, my understanding is that some people do find that to be a really good environment for them in terms of work capacity. I think it's about the work that you do and how you do it. But to have, in theory, multiple screens, quote unquote, that you can go between, I do think like that is a part of the frontier. I remember back when computers were coming into the homes in like the late 70s into the 80s. And I was so frustrated as a child because I basically had to learn DOS in order to get things to happen. And I didn't realize that I was so ahead of my time in my head. Like I didn't understand computing, but when we got to like the internet era and into like the social media platforms, I remember there have been times now over the past, like, I don't know, 20 years where I'm like, or more, that I say to myself, this is what I was thinking of when I was so small. Like I didn't have the language for it, I didn't understand it, but to me there were so many barriers like in the way of getting the thing that you want, or to accomplish the thing. So,
and bringing it back to kink, I have all the 3D stuff because it's kink.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, you lost me. So 3D in and of itself is a kink?
No, but you can use that, like that headset, for other purposes.
Oh, yes.
You can top and bottom with a VR headset.
That's something to think about. Guess I hadn't quite considered that before. All right. Anything else we have for the good of the order today?
So is that a motion control sheath and then either dildo or fuck machine?
Are you asking me, or are you just?
This is me just pondering like the interactive VR.
So
Like,
one of
how
the
would
things
that
I'll
work?
give you the example of what I have used it for in the past is to help a friend of mine fulfill a drone fantasy.
Define drone.
So basically being programmed to obey, essentially.
Okay, so not the flying machine
No,
with
no,
the
not the
camera
flying
thing.
things.
Right. Okay. That's what I was
Yeah, like
getting
the
at.
rubber drones. Put the hood on them; they all look the same.
Right.
But that's something that you can achieve with a 3D headset.
Well,
You
I
put that on.
was thinking as you said that, I was thinking of Hypno.
Exactly.
Like that's one aspect of that you could do, that you could have a visual hypnotic, like, or I guess recording. I was about to say tape, just to show how old I am. As a,
Video of some sort.
yes, a visual presentation, probably with audio. In that case,
And it's very good for that purpose.
so it's been successful, is what I hear.
Yes. I'm still working on it, so I won't go into too many details, but it's been a fun ride.
Well, when you perfected it, you're welcome to come back and discuss it with us, unless there are trade
absolutely.
secrets or something that you don't want revealed.
Nah, that's why I like playing around with these cheap ones, is because if you can give people a cheap entry into it, it makes it really easy.
It's fair.
First hit is free.
I mean, you can get started on little old cell phones and things like that.
True. Well, and that is some of what the platforms have done, is made VR headsets that basically utilize a phone as the visual, like the headset is basically just a holder, type thing. So
We can make that the next episode.
nice.
Show and tell.
We'll have to work on that, and maybe we'll have some media available to show people That's YouTube appropriate.
Maybe not.
We can make it safe for work.
Yeah.
And with
Very much
that, I think that's the end? Question mark.
Yeah, I think we're good.
The jars of ink are full.
So, how full are your jars? You can post to us in many ways, such as coming in our blog at cubsoutloud.com. Shoot us an email, cubsoutloud@gmail.com. You can tell us by leaving us a voicemail at 361-COL Talk. That's 361-265-8255. You can follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, X, and YouTube at Cubs Out Loud, the appropriate place in the URL. In fact, subscribe to our YouTube channel so whenever we do go live, you'll get a notification. Don't forget to ding that bell. You can also join our Entourage chat, where we let you know when we're streaming these shows at bit.ly/telegram-col. Sometimes we have on our Google Calendar when we know. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't. For various reasons. You can get various accoutrements at our Zazzle store at zazzle.com/cubsoutloud, where we have our brand spanking new designs of the Coalition of Connected Kinksters. Designed by Smashy. You can find more of his work at tpublic.com/user/Smashy the Bear. Zazzle store, zazzle.com/cubsoutloud. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/cubsoutloud or send us a donation at paypal.me/cubsoutloud. Find us on your various podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and Spotify. You can find me anywhere on the internet as Boxset, Box Poppy, Box Cub, Box something or other, Box Cub over on Blue Sky. Gary?
If you would like to find me, you can pretty much find me anywhere online as GareBear73. If you want to see the not safe for work stuff, you can go to Blue Sky and look for GareBear73XXX. Tony, if folks were to get in touch with you, are there any ways they could do so online?
Probably the easiest one is Blue Sky, as we've been talking. Cubs is CUBZIZ.
I don't think I'm following you.
Good deal.
I'll check. And with that, say good night, everybody.
Have a good one, y'all.